I only went to the bank because my debit card had expired. The teller looked at my account, then quietly stood up and closed the office door behind us. She lowered her voice until I could barely hear her. "Mr. Rhodes, I don't think anyone has explained this to you." She turned her monitor toward me. For 36 straight months, part of my Army pension had been transferred into another account opened under the name Cal Rhodes. I had never used that name at the bank. I knew instantly I had never opened that account. So who had? If you've ever trusted someone enough to stop checking the details, stay with me. Linda Carter had worked behind that same counter for nearly 20 years. She knew my wife before cancer took her. She remembered when my son Michael was still bringing homemade Father's Day cards into the lobby. She wasn't the kind of banker who frightened customers. She protected them. "I wasn't supposed to notice this," she said quietly. "What changed?" "Your debit card renewal required us to review every linked authorization." She pointed toward 3 recurring monthly transfers. The destination account carried my shortened military nickname. Not Calvin. Cal. Only one place had ever used that version of my name. Army personnel paperwork from decades earlier. "I've never banked under that name." "I didn't think you had." The amount wasn't enormous, just enough each month to disappear inside ordinary living expenses. That was somehow worse. Large thefts demand attention. Small ones quietly become routine. Linda printed several pages and carefully slid them across the desk. "I can't tell you who owns the receiving account. I understand. But I can tell you something else." She circled one authorization date. It began exactly 3 years ago. 3 years. Almost to the week. The same month Michael insisted I stop worrying about paying contractors after replacing my roof and remodeling the kitchen. When I arrived home that afternoon, Michael was already unloading lumber from his truck. "How'd the bank visit go?" "They replaced the debit card." "Good. I also learned there are automatic payments leaving my pension." He barely hesitated. "Oh, that's probably for the home repairs." "Probably. Not definitely." "I figured you'd forgotten." I nodded slowly. "You're probably right." His shoulders relaxed. "I've been keeping track of everything." "I appreciate that." He smiled. "I'll keep handling the bills." "Please do." Technically, I had just handed him permission to continue. In reality, I had done something very different. During 28 years managing Army administrative records, I learned that people often become less careful after they believe they've answered your questions. That evening, I carried every bank statement from the past 4 years into my study. Not to confront anyone, only to compare dates. The transfers always arrived on the same morning my pension was deposited. Then another payment left 2 days later labeled Residential Improvement Services. Interesting. I hadn't hired a contractor in nearly 2 years. Yet the invoices continued every month. I quietly placed the newest statement beside an old folder containing every receipt from my actual home renovations. One invoice immediately caught my attention. The payment date appeared almost 4 months before the contractor ever began working on my house. For the first time since leaving the bank, I wasn't asking who had opened the second account. I was asking why home repairs were being paid for before they even existed. I didn't mention the impossible invoice dates to Michael. Not because I doubted what I had seen, Because 26 years processing Army administrative records taught me something that saved countless hours of unnecessary investigations. The first explanation is rarely the complete one. The second usually reveals who benefits from the first. So instead of confronting my son, I thanked him for everything he had done around the house. His smile came too quickly. "You've handled enough already, Dad. I appreciate that. I'll keep taking care of the paperwork. I'd like that." For the first time since leaving the bank, he stopped sounding cautious. He sounded comfortable. Exactly what I needed. The following morning, I drove into town carrying a cardboard box filled with old contractor folders. Most people saved receipts because the government recommended it. I saved them because the Army had taught me that dates tell stories long after memories begin changing. By noon, my dining room table was covered with invoices, warranties, canceled checks, and handwritten notes my late wife had tucked inside folders years before. One yellow envelope immediately caught my attention. Across the front, she had written only 3 words: "Kitchen remodel final." Inside rested every receipt connected with the renovation Michael claimed those automatic pension payments covered. The contractor had been paid in full. 1 cashier's check. 1 final invoice. No monthly installments. No continuing obligations. Yet my bank statements still showed identical withdrawals every month. The explanation no longer fit the paperwork. That afternoon, Michael stopped by carrying fresh groceries. "You didn't need to do that. I was already shopping." He set the bags on the counter. "You look busy." "Just organizing old records." He glanced toward the invoices spread across the table. "You can throw most of those away." Interesting. My wife used to say almost the opposite. Keep paperwork. You never know when yesterday becomes important tomorrow. I'll probably hold on to them. He nodded politely, then changed the subject. "Business has been a little slow." "I'm sorry to hear that. It'll pick up." I believed he wanted it to. Whether he believed it himself, I couldn't tell. After he left, I noticed something tucked beneath the grocery receipt. A folded contractor estimate. Not mine. The company logo belonged to Michael's construction business. The customer name had been torn away. Only the estimate number and date remained. 3 years old, exactly when the pension transfers first began. At first I assumed he had accidentally dropped it. Then I noticed one more detail. The estimate total matched one of the recurring withdrawals from my pension almost exactly. Coincidence? Perhaps. But Army administration had taught me another habit. Coincidences deserve documentation before they deserve conclusions. The next morning, Linda Carter called the house. "I wanted to let you know something." "What happened?" "I reviewed another authorization connected to your account, and it wasn't filed at the bank." "Where was it filed?" "With the pension processing office." She paused. "The authorization references contractor services." I looked toward the kitchen folder again. "But the authorization date," she finished my sentence quietly, "comes nearly 4 months before any contractor began working on your house." Now 2 independent records agreed. The bank and the pension office. Whatever those monthly transfers truly funded, it wasn't my home. For the first time since the teller whispered that someone else had been receiving my pension, I stopped asking whether the payments were dishonest. I started asking who needed them to begin before there was anything legitimate to pay for. The more paperwork I reviewed, the less interested I became in arguing with Michael. Arguments produce explanations. Documents produce timelines. During my Army years, I spent nearly 3 decades auditing personnel authorizations before they reached commanding officers. The hardest investigations were never solved by catching someone in a lie. They were solved by quietly placing every document in chronological order until the truth stopped hiding between them. That became my strategy. The following afternoon, Michael called. "Dad, how are the statements coming along?" "They're making more sense." "Good. I think you were right about letting you tell everything." His voice relaxed immediately. "I'm glad. I don't understand half those banking forms anymore. I'll take care of them. I know you will." After hanging up, I wrote one sentence across the top of my notebook. People reveal more after they believe they've been trusted again. The next morning, I visited Linda Carter at the bank. She couldn't discuss the receiving account. Bank rules wouldn't allow it, but she could explain documentation. "I've been comparing authorization dates," I told her. She nodded. "So have I." She placed 2 forms side by side. "Notice anything unusual?" At first I didn't. Then my Army training quietly returned. The authorization numbers followed different formatting systems. One belonged to current pension processing. The other matched an older administrative template discontinued years earlier. "I remember this format." Linda looked surprised. "So do I." "It disappeared after the pension modernization program." She smiled. "I wondered whether you'd recognize it." Someone hadn't simply copied my name. They had copied an obsolete authorization style that almost nobody still remembered. That afternoon, I stopped by the church office where I volunteered each tax season. My old filing cabinet still contained copies of military retirement correspondence I had organized years earlier. Inside one faded folder rested an original pension enrollment packet. Across the top appeared my full legal signature. Below it sat one additional line: preferred administrative abbreviation. Cal Rhodes stared at the page for several seconds. Only a handful of military personnel files had ever carried that shortened designation. No modern bank employee would have invented it. Someone had copied it from my original records. Driving home, I passed Michael's construction office. The parking lot looked unusually empty. Only 2 trucks remained. 3 years earlier, he operated 8. Business slowdown suddenly felt less like conversation, more like evidence. That evening, my grandson Ethan stopped by after baseball practice. "Grandpa?" "Yeah?" "Dad's been working late every night." "I know. He says one big project will fix everything." I smiled gently. "I hope he's right." Ethan looked toward the old family photographs hanging in my study. "You always say paperwork tells the truth." "Eventually. I don't really understand that." "You will someday." After he left, I spread every document across the dining room table. Bank transfers, contractor invoices, authorization dates, the old Army abbreviation. One detail finally refused to fit. The contractor payments didn't continue into home repairs. They continued directly into business deposits. The description changed. The destination pattern didn't. Just before bedtime, Linda called one final time. "I can't tell you whose account received the transfers." "I understand. But I can tell you something allowed under banking policy." "What is it?" "The receiving account stopped identifying itself as a contractor 3 months ago." What does it identify itself as now? She hesitated. A commercial operating account. The money had never been following my house. It had quietly started following someone's business instead. The words commercial operating account stayed with me all night. Until that moment, I believed someone had quietly redirected part of my pension. Now I understood something much larger. Someone had built a business plan that depended on my pension arriving every month. During 28 years in Army administration, I learned that stolen money usually answered only one question. Following where it was expected next answered the rest. The following morning, I drove to the county recorder's office. Not because I suspected real estate, because businesses leave paper trails long before people admit they're in trouble. The clerk recognized me from years of volunteer tax seminars. What can I help you find today? I'm researching one construction company. She searched the public database before turning the screen toward me. Calvin Rhodes Construction. Active. Then, their filing appeared beneath it. Rhodes Property Holdings, LLC. I frowned. I've never heard of that. It was registered just under 3 years ago. 3 years. The same month my pension transfers began. The timing no longer felt accidental. I requested copies of the public filings. Nothing illegal appeared, only addresses, loan references, business registrations. Then one property description caught my attention. A small rental duplex across town. Michael had never mentioned buying investment property. Driving past the address later that afternoon, I immediately recognized the building. It wasn't abandoned. Families lived there. Children's bicycles rested beside the sidewalk. Laundry hung from second-floor balconies. Whatever financial trouble existed, innocent tenants now stood quietly inside it. That changed everything. Back home, I spread the county filings beside my bank statements. 3 timelines now sat next to each other. Pension transfers, business registrations, property purchase. Every one of them began within the same 6-week period. Late that afternoon, Michael stopped by unexpectedly. "You've been busy." "I've been organizing paperwork." He laughed. "Still the Army administrator." Old habits. He noticed the county envelopes. "Thinking about buying property? Just reading?" He smiled politely. "I've got enough construction paperwork for both of us." "I imagine you do." For one brief moment, I almost asked about the duplex. Instead, I poured 2 cups of coffee. Sometimes silence collects more truth than questions. Before leaving, Michael paused at the front door. "I've got an important financing meeting next Thursday." "Big project?" "I hope so." His answer sounded rehearsed. Not dishonest. Incomplete. Thursday. I quietly circled the date on my calendar. That evening, Linda Carter called again. "I think I found something you'll want to compare." "What is it?" "The pension transfer amounts. I've already reviewed those. Compare them against the business deposit schedule. I don't have business records. You don't need them." She paused. Public lien notices include monthly payment obligations. After hanging up, I searched the county filings again. There it was. A recorded commercial lien. Monthly obligation, exactly the same amount as the pension transfers. Not similar, identical. The money leaving my pension wasn't randomly supporting Michael's business. It was making one specific monthly payment. The final page of the filing contained one additional note. Refinancing approval expires in 9 days unless current payment history remains uninterrupted. 9 days. The mystery changed completely. Recovering my pension would not simply expose my son's deception. If I acted immediately, refinancing would fail. The duplex could be lost. The business might collapse. Employees, tenants, families, people who had never touched my pension could pay the price for a decision they never made. For the first time since Linda whispered across her office desk, I realized this investigation had never really been about stolen money. It had become a question of whether justice could protect innocent people without pretending my son had done nothing wrong. 9 days. I had spent enough years in Army administration to know that deadlines rarely belong to only one person. Someone always stood on the other side waiting for paperwork to arrive. The refinancing date wasn't just Michael's problem anymore. Families renting those duplexes were unknowingly tied to the same calendar that now sat on my kitchen table. For the first time since Linda showed me the diverted pension transfers, I wished the truth had been simpler. Simple theft would have been easier. This wasn't. The following morning, I drove past Michael's office again. Only one work truck remained. The parking lot that once held employees loading lumber before sunrise now looked almost abandoned. Inside the reception window hung a handwritten notice. By appointment only. Business wasn't slowing. It was shrinking. I never went inside. Observation had always served me better than interruption. Back home, I sorted every document into separate folders. Bank transfers, contractor invoices, county filings, Army pension records. I wasn't preparing for a confrontation. I was preparing for understanding. Late that afternoon, my granddaughter Emma stopped by after school. "Grandpa, come on in." She placed a thank you card on the table. "Dad said business is finally turning around." I smiled gently. "I hope it does. He says next week is really important." I imagine it is. She noticed the folders covering my dining room table. Taxes again? Something like that. She hugged me before leaving. After the front door closed, I stared at the calendar again. Next week. The same week as the refinancing deadline. Children often repeat truths they don't realize they're carrying. That evening, Linda Carter called. I reviewed one more set of dates. "What did you find?" "The monthly transfers. I've memorized them." "I know. But compare the transfer dates with your son's business deposits. I still don't have those. You do now." She reminded me of something completely public. Commercial lien filings listed every required payment date. I compared them immediately. Each pension transfer reached the operating account exactly 1 business day before the commercial payment became due. Not afterward. Before. The pension wasn't cleaning up financial problems. It was preventing them. I leaned back quietly. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. Just before sunset, Michael arrived carrying a small folder. I brought copies of the latest repair paperwork. I appreciate that. He placed the folder beside my chair. "You don't need to worry about any of this anymore. I've never minded paperwork." He laughed softly. "I know." For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked toward the window. "If everything goes well next week..." He stopped. "What happens?" We'll finally be able to breathe again. Not I. We. That single word stayed with me long after he drove away. He still believed he was protecting the family. He simply couldn't see what his protection had already cost. Later that evening, I opened the folder he had left behind. Inside rested several fresh contractor invoices. Everyone carried different job descriptions, different addresses, different project names. Yet each invoice requested exactly the same amount, the identical amount leaving my pension every month. Real construction projects almost never produce perfectly identical invoices. Administrative templates do. One final sheet rested beneath the invoices. At first it looked like an ordinary meeting reminder. Then I noticed the heading. Commercial Refinancing Review. Thursday, 9 a.m. Required attendees, business owner, lender, title representative, financial guarantor. Someone was still expected to guarantee Michael's future. The only question left was whether he believed that someone was still me. 6 days remained before the refinancing meeting. I stopped thinking about missing money. Money could be recovered. Character took longer. During my years in Army administration, I reviewed hundreds of financial authorizations. Every investigation eventually reached the same point. There came a day when collecting more paperwork no longer changed the truth. From that moment forward, the only remaining question became whether you would use the evidence to destroy someone, or give them one last chance to tell it themselves. I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. Instead, I began preparing for it. I spread every document across the dining room table one final time. The pension transfer summaries, the old Army enrollment packet bearing the abbreviation Cal Rhodes, the contractor invoices, the commercial lien, the county property filings, the refinancing notice. Each page supported the next. Nothing depended on assumptions anymore, only chronology. Linda Carter stopped by that afternoon after finishing her shift. She wasn't there as a banker. She was there as someone who had known my family for almost 20 years. She quietly studied the folders. "You've organized everything. Army habit." She smiled. I noticed something else. What? She pointed to the transfer authorizations. The monthly pension diversion wasn't increased. No. It stayed exactly the same amount for 3 years. I nodded. If someone wanted to steal as much as possible, they wouldn't leave the amount unchanged. Exactly. The transfers had been calculated, not to empty my account, only to keep something else alive. Linda folded her hands. I think your son believed he was borrowing time. Not money. Time. The distinction mattered. It didn't excuse what happened, but it explained it. After she left, I opened an old metal filing cabinet in my study. Inside rested Army retirement papers I hadn't touched in years. Near the bottom, I found something I had forgotten completely. My original pension beneficiary file. Attached behind it was the identity verification packet, completed on the day I retired. Every official signature, every specimen signature, every administrative abbreviation. No modern forgery could survive comparison with those originals. I placed the folder into the binder. One more document. One less unanswered question. The following morning, I drove past Michael's office again. This time, employees were loading equipment into trailers, not preparing for work, returning rented machinery. Business was already shrinking around him. When I arrived home, Michael was waiting on the front porch. "You've been busy." "So have you." He smiled tiredly. "Thursday might finally fix everything. I hope it helps." He looked relieved that I asked nothing more. Before leaving, he placed another envelope on the kitchen counter. "More paperwork." "For the house?" "Just routine records." After he drove away, I opened the envelope. Inside were updated contractor invoices, different addresses, different project numbers, different clients. Every invoice still totaled the exact amount diverted from my pension. Someone had changed the descriptions, not the numbers. Administrative camouflage, nothing more. Late that evening, the telephone rang. It was the title company handling Thursday's refinancing. "I'm confirming attendance for the guarantor." "I think you've reached the wrong person." There was a brief silence. "Our file lists Mr. Calvin Rhodes." My grip tightened around the receiver. "I see. Will you be attending?" "I won't." When the call ended, I looked once more at the Army retirement folder. For 3 years, Michael hadn't only depended on my pension. He had quietly built an entire refinancing package around the assumption that I would unknowingly appear as its financial guarantor. Thursday's meeting wasn't the beginning. It was the final signature. And for the first time since Linda whispered across her office desk, I knew the next document added to this binder would not come from a bank. It would come directly from my son. Thursday morning arrived with clear skies and quiet streets. Most people would have seen it as an ordinary business day. For me, it felt like the final page of an investigation that had begun with a simple debit card replacement. The Army taught me many things over 28 years. One lesson never changed: never attend a meeting carrying accusations. Carry documentation instead. The binder resting on the passenger seat contained everything: the pension transfer history, the original Army retirement packet showing my administrative abbreviation, the authorization comparisons, contractor invoices, county property filings, commercial lien notices, the title company's confirmation. Nothing depended on memory anymore. Everything depended on chronology. I arrived at the title company's conference room 10 minutes early. The receptionist smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Rhodes." "Good morning." She glanced at her schedule. "Mr. Calvin Rhodes?" I simply nodded. For the first time in 3 years, that shortened name no longer belonged to someone hiding behind paperwork. It belonged to me again. A few minutes later, Michael hurried into the room carrying a leather portfolio. He froze when he saw me. "Dad? I thought I'd help with the paperwork." His face lost every trace of color. The lender entered moments later, followed by the title officer. Everyone exchanged polite greetings. The meeting began routinely: financial statements, property values, business projections. Then the lender reached the final page. "We'll just need the guarantor's signature." He slid the document toward me. Instead of reaching for the pen, I quietly placed my Army retirement binder on the table. I believe these documents should be reviewed first. The room became silent. I opened the binder one section at a time. The original pension enrollment, the specimen signatures, the bank transfer summaries, the obsolete authorization format, the contractor invoices, the county filings, the commercial lien schedule. Finally, the title company's own attendance confirmation listing Cal Rhodes as guarantor. No raised voices, no accusations, only one uninterrupted documentary timeline. The lender slowly compared the authorization signatures with my original Army records. Then he looked toward Michael. "Did Mr. Rhodes authorize these pension transfers?" Michael lowered his eyes. "No." "Were you authorized to represent him as guarantor?" A long silence followed. Finally, Michael whispered, "No." Nobody else spoke. They didn't need to. The documents had already answered every important question. The title officer quietly closed the refinancing file. "This transaction cannot proceed." The lender nodded. "We'll suspend the application pending further review." No dramatic confrontation. No shouting. Only paperwork reaching its inevitable conclusion. After the meeting ended, Michael followed me into the nearly empty parking lot. "I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long moment. "I know. I never wanted to steal from you. I believe that. I thought one more project would save everything. And when it didn't, I kept needing one more month." His voice finally broke. "I didn't know how to tell you I'd failed." I placed the binder on the hood of my truck. "Do you know what hurts most?" He shook his head. "You believed I would rather lose my pension than hear the truth from my own son." Tears filled his eyes. I was ashamed. I know. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then I opened the binder one final time, not to show him more evidence, to remove every original document, the Army records, the pension file, the bank summaries. I handed him only one page, the transfer history. "Keep this." He looked confused. "Why?" "So you'll never forget how easily one dishonest signature became 3 years of silence." He stared at the page without speaking. As I climbed into my truck, I realized the refinancing meeting had never truly been about saving a business. It had been about giving my son one final opportunity to choose honesty before someone else forced the choice for him. The money could be recovered. Whether trust could be recovered would depend entirely on what he decided to do next. 3 months after the refinancing meeting, I walked into the bank carrying nothing more than a deposit slip and a cup of coffee. Linda Carter smiled the moment she saw me. "Good morning, Mr. Rhodes." "Morning, Linda." She glanced at my account before looking back up. "Everything is exactly where it belongs now." For the first time in years, every dollar of my Army pension arrived in one account. My account. No shortened names. No hidden transfers. No quiet diversions disguised as contractor payments. The numbers finally matched the truth. Money had returned. Trust would take longer. Michael's construction company survived, but not in the way he once imagined. Without the fraudulent refinancing, he sold the investment duplex to a reputable housing organization that honored every tenant's existing lease. His business closed its second office, returned leased equipment, and reduced to a small crew handling local renovation projects. It was a humbler future, but it was an honest one. One Saturday afternoon, Michael knocked on my front door carrying a plain manila envelope. I wanted you to have this. Inside were monthly repayment records. Every dollar diverted from my pension had been scheduled for repayment. Not because a court required it. Because his conscience finally did. He looked at me quietly. I know the money isn't the hardest thing to repay. No, it's the trust. I nodded. And trust doesn't come with a payment schedule. He lowered his eyes. I'll keep showing up anyway. I hope you do. Weeks later, my grandchildren joined me for our usual Sunday dinner. After the meal, my grandson Jacob wandered into the study where I kept my old Army records. He pointed toward the thick administrative binder resting on the bookshelf. "Grandpa, what's in that one?" I smiled. "One of the most important lessons the Army ever taught me." He looked curious. "About money?" "No." "About paperwork?" "Not exactly." I opened the binder. Inside were the pension statements, the transfer history, the title company documents, the original Army retirement forms, and one handwritten page I had added after everything was over. Jacob read the first sentence aloud. "Integrity is what you choose when nobody believes the documents will ever be read again." He looked at me. "Did you write that?" "I did." He smiled. "I think I'll remember it. So will I." After he left the room, I placed the binder back on the shelf. I realized I no longer kept it because I feared another betrayal. I kept it because every family eventually faces a moment when honesty costs more than silence. When that day arrives, someone must decide whether truth will be used as a weapon or as a bridge back toward one another. Looking back, I never truly wanted to recover my pension. I wanted my son to stop carrying a lie that grew heavier every month he protected it. The money came home. More importantly, so did the opportunity for him to become the man I had always believed he could be. If this story reminded you that careful stewardship includes both your finances and your relationships, carry that lesson with you. Review the details that matter. Tell the truth before small compromises become lifelong burdens. And remember that accountability and forgiveness are not opposites. When guided by wisdom, they become partners in rebuilding what deception nearly destroyed. God bless every veteran, every parent, every child, and every family choosing honesty over convenience, one faithful decision at a time.